Arguably the biggest free agent signing in Ohio history, Johnny Gaudreau's first season with the Blue Jackets was not as expected, but he's still the MVP of this team this season. Let's talk all about Johnny Gaudreau on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jacket. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the little bell button down below to get notified when new episodes go live. Today, we are continuing our season reviews. We're talking about the man himself, Johnny Gaudreau. And hey, let's just jump right into it because Johnny Gaudreau is maybe the most exciting player that's ever come to Columbus. And I know everyone was excited when they picked up Artemi Panarin. Rick Nash has done a lot for this team. Like, there's been exciting players, but Johnny Gaudreau chose to come to Columbus. He turned down more money in Calgary and an extra year on his deal. He turned down more money in New Jersey to come to Columbus. And I think, this is something that I've kind of been talking about all season is what does Johnny Gaudreau mean to this team off the ice? And what does he mean to this fan base off the ice? And so, he could have come here and put up 120 points this season. You could have come here and put up 50 points, and I think the reaction would have been the same. Teams around the league and fans around the league are kind of looking at the Blue Jackets and saying, well, Johnny Gaudreau must want to be there for a reason. And yeah, he wanted he wanted to be close to family, but I think he believes in this team. I think he's probably just as frustrated as all of us are about how this season went. But it's one season. They've got 6 more of Johnny Gaudreau seasons to go, and he's only 29. Like, he's getting up there in terms of, like, he's definitely a veteran now. He's not a kid anymore, but, like, Johnny Gaudreau is going to be really good for a really long time, and him coming to this team, I think, was probably the biggest statement that this team could have made in the next, like, however many years, It's beyond what he does on the ice. And what he did on the ice was real good this season. We talked about that a little bit a couple episodes ago. What he did off the ice was he kind of made people sit up and pay attention to Columbus. And obviously that wasn't, like, it didn't go quite the way I think everyone planned it to, with the Blue Jackets being as bad as they were. I think what happened was they put a lot of attention on Columbus, and everyone was like, man, what's happening? Johnny Gaudreau is going to be Johnny Gaudreau's going to be good for this team. He's going to cause people to pay attention. And then what happened was they paid attention, and it wasn't great here. So I think there's a lot of, like, mixed feelings about this first season. Not necessarily because of Gaudreau, because I have no fault in how Gaudreau played this season, and we'll kind of get into that in a minute. But I just wanted to kind of start by talking a little bit about how important this signing was, because a free agent as big as Gaudreau has never chosen to be in Columbus. All of the big players that they've acquired have been either through trades or drafting, and then they've been traded away, or they've left, or they've whatever. Gaudreau chose to be here, and Gaudreau turned down some very good opportunities from other teams to be here, and I think that's really, really cool. I think that's a really exciting thing, and let's get into Gaudreau kind of as a player this season, because last season he had 115 points, which was a full 16 points more than his previous career high. And so I think there was a lot of there was a lot of, not necessarily pressure on him, but there was definitely a lot of, can he do it again? Is this a flash in the pan? Is he going to go to Columbus and put up like 60 points? And I don't think he was as good as people wanted him to be, but I don't think that's his fault. And so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you about eBay Motors, because for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage, look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. When you shop on eBay Motors with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game with no time left. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right part's guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Let's talk about Johnny Gaudreau. That's what we've been doing all season. I'll go ahead and switch the overlay back. There we go. 115 points last season, only 74 this season. And I say only 74 because I believe second place was Patrick Laine with 55. So he had almost 20 more points than the next best player on this team. He was also the only player, basically, that was healthy all season. It was just him and Andrew Peeke, and Andrew Peake's not putting up a ton of points because of, he's a defenseman and he just doesn't put up a ton of points. Johnny Gaudreau played with so many different players this season. And when he did find that chemistry, when he did get that chemistry going, inevitably one of them would get hurt. The lines would get jumbled around, and then there you go, it's gone. He had so many different wingers. Like, he played with Jake Voracek. He played with Kirill Marchenko. Kent Johnson played wing for a while. Patrick Laine played wing for a while. They tried Emil Bemstrom in that spot. Like, centers, he played with, I think, every single center. He had Kent Johnson as his center. He had Boone Jenner as his center most of the time. Jack Roslovic was his center. Near the end of the season there, he had Sean Corrali as a center. So, like, I'm not surprised that he didn't put up 115 points again. Because even if he had the line mate quality, he didn't have the consistency. His last season in Calgary, he played with Tkachuk and Lindholm, I believe it was, for basically the entire season. It was like that was the line in Calgary, and Johnny Gaudreau was the guy in Columbus, but he didn't have that consistency. If he'd had a full year with Jenner and Laine, and both of those players had been healthy and producing, then I think we definitely could have seen, Patrick Laine. I did the math on yesterday's show. Let me see if I can find it. Patrick Laine would have scored 11 more goals if he'd played all 82 games. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that Gaudreau would probably have assisted on at least 50 or more % of those goals. So if he'd assisted on, 5 or 6 of those goals, then immediately he jumps to 80 points. He jumps to basically a point per game. And same thing with Jenner. Jenner, those 5 goals that we would have had if he'd played all 82 games. And, it's all hypotheticals, obviously, but there's another potential 5 assists for Gaudreau. So it's really, you look at his point total this season, and you're like, oh wow, he scored 74 points. So that's 50 points less than 40 points less, 41 points less than he scored last season. But last season, he's playing on a better team. Let's just go out and say it. Calgary was a better team last season than Columbus was this season. And he was playing with the same players the entire time. I'm trying to pull up what the Calgary Flames most played line was last season, because I'm going to go ahead and assume that it was, in fact, the Gaudreau Tkachuk line. Let's find out. It was, in fact, at 5v5, Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk played almost 1,000 minutes together. This season, I believe Johnny Gaudreau's most consistent line mates were Boone Jenner and Patrick Laine, and they played about 250 minutes of time together. Like it's starting to make sense, and I think Gaudreau was going to be disappointed with the season he had. I think fans are disappointed with the season he had. I don't think they should be. I think this was the best. He was basically a point per game. What was he? 74 points in 80 games, basically a point per game, and he was doing that with zero consistency in his line mates, and occasionally his line mates were like Sean Crowley and Emil Bemstrom, who both fine players, not top line players. So I am perfectly happy with how Johnny Gaudreau's season went. I'm excited for next season. I'll be talking a lot about a healthy Patrick Laine. Get Johnny Gaudreau a real center. I still don't think that the center issue is as big of a deal as getting Patrick Laine healthy, keeping him healthy, and keeping him on that top line. Because if you've got two guys like that, like you can put anyone in the middle. I do think that Fantilli would be a perfect fit between those two guys. If he goes back to Michigan next year, then it'll be a different story. They might not draft him. They might end up drafting someone else. They might fall in the draft. They might go up in the draft. If they get Bedard, then putting Bedard between Gaudreau and Laine feels like a home run, So lots of moving parts next season, but that's kind of the thing. And in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about next season and kind of what I want to see from Gaudreau next season. But it's all, again, it's not what I want to see from him. It's what I want to see for him, if that makes sense. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what I would like to see from Gaudreau next season. And that's not necessarily me saying, hey, Gaudreau needs to be better next season. But I think next season, what we need from Gaudreau is, I think he needs more consistent ice time. I feel like his average ice time was lower than basically any other season. There are a couple of times this season where he played under 14 minutes, and they didn't really have an answer for that when the coaches were asked about it after the game. Getting a new coach, I think, one that is going to play Gaudreau. Like, I don't think he should be out there for like 24 minutes, but he should be playing between 18 and 20 minutes a night. And I think partially that was due to when he and Laine got split up for parts of the season. They were trying to give 18 minutes to Laine and 18 minutes to Gaudreau, put them together. Like, I get wanting to split up your offense a little bit, but when you only have one line of consistent offense, keep them together, stick them together. So I'd like to see more ice time from Gaudreau. But apart from that, I just want to see more of what he did this year. Like, he had a couple of games. He had more than a couple of games, actually, this year where he was the game changer, and he can be that game changer and have, a 3-point night or a 4-point night and have those underrated nights where you're like, man, Johnny Gaudreau hasn't scored a goal in a minute. And then you look and you're like, oh, because he's got 18 assists in his last 10 games or something crazy like that. I would like to see him score a couple more goals next season. I think the Blue Jackets were really kind of stymied by the lack of goal scoring this season. Partially that's because a lot of their goal scorers missed large periods of time. Gaudreau has only ever had less than a 20-goal season, like twice in his career, unless you count his first season where he played one game and scored one goal. In his rookie season, he had 24 goals, then 30, 18, 24, 36, 18, 19, 40 goals, 21. So if we can get 30 or more goals out of Gaudreau next season, plus I'm just going to go ahead and pencil him in for let's say 50 assists, maybe 60 assists. Like that's kind of the numbers I'm looking for in Gaudreau. Penalty minutes, that's fine. He was kind of an anomaly a couple of seasons ago. We had 6 penalty minutes in 56 games, which is very funny. He either has 0 penalty minutes or he has, a handful. His high is 26, which he had last season. He had 22 this season, which makes sense. Again, very frustrated. But I think, interestingly, his power play points were about the same as they've been. So his high on the power play is 27, which he had in 2018-19. Last season, he had 25 power play points. This season, he had 24. So what I would like to see from Gaudreau, kind of extrapolating from that, next season, I would love to see more 5-on-5 scoring from him. I mean, like, of his 21 goals. Only 3 of them were on the power play this season. So 21 of his 53 assists were on the power play. But last season, he had 75 assists, and 19 of those were on the power play. So that's what, 56 even strength assists. Like, that's, I would love to see those, like, maybe not those numbers. I don't think 115 points is attainable, but like getting 100 points out of Johnny Gaudreau next season would be fantastic. And so I think that's what that should be the benchmark. I think is Johnny Gaudreau should be between 80 and 100 points next season. I would love to see that. And I think if everything goes right, if he gets the right line mates, if he gets the right ice time, consistency, a center, like those are all very doable things. I'm going to finish up just with the Twitter poll that I had for the podcast Twitter. I forgot what the word for podcast was there, which, I'm doing fine over here. The poll is still running for a little bit. He's got 53% A, 42% B, and 3.8% C, which makes me think that one person gave him a C, which if that's you, like, please tell me, because I'm fascinated by your reasoning. But I'm going to give him an A, not an A+. I'm going to give him an A. I think he did the best he could on a subpar roster, on a very broken team, with basically not knowing who his line mates were going to be game to game. So I'm going to go ahead and give him an A. Again, someone on Twitter said it the best, actually. Let me see if I can pull it up. Poor Johnny's getting graded on a group project where half the group members dropped out of school with no warning. The other half were like, wait, there's a group project? That's from Sad Girl Hours over on Twitter. And, like, you're right, Sad Girl Hours is the thing. He's the only person in the class that remembered they had homework. And I don't think she should be deducted points for that. There is going to be an episode later today, or I'm going to try to make an episode later today. If not, I will be back on Monday with more player reviews, with more prospect talk, with more Blue Jackets updates. There's been a couple of little news items. So that'll be Monday's episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please feel free to do so. And thank you for listening. Thank you. If you are an everydayer, I appreciate you. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate you as well. If you comment, if you like, if you retweet me on Twitter, if you interact with me in any way, I appreciate you. Let's have a fun off season, guys. Let's have a fun off season and then gear up for a fun regular season. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the podcast at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until later today, make sure you stay locked on.